I remember it like it was yesterday. My brother and I were very close. My brother was a year older than me. He was the high school quarterback. I was a receiver. And they called us the Capson Connection because he would throw the football and I would sometimes catch the football and sometimes we would score some points. And that was a cool thing. And it was really cool growing up with an older brother. I always looked up to him. He was my hero. He was someone that I wanted to be like. He was a true leader in every sense of the word. He led by example. He was a hard worker, very focused, very driven. He really was only focused on one thing, and that was football. And he was passionate about it. And I learned a lot from him. My brother went off to play college football and then came home and made a decision. Now, I do a keynote talk called Choices. And in that keynote talk, I talk about how we're always making choices. From the second we wake up until the time we go to bed, we're making choices. We choose to brush our teeth. We choose, or not. We choose to brush our hair, or not. We make choices every single day. And my brother came home and at the age of 23, made a choice. He decided to buy a motorcycle. Now, in most families, and not in a lot of families, that's not a big deal. Motorcycles are part of a lot of families. There's people that start off on mini bikes and dirt bikes and they graduate onto street bikes. But in my family, there was no one that owned a motorcycle. We didn't have motorcycles growing up. In fact, when my brother decided to buy this motorcycle, he went to my father and asked my father to co-sign on the loan. And my father said no. My father knew that my brother probably wasn't ready for a motorcycle. He'd never had a motorcycle, never driven a motorcycle ever before. At the time, to pass your motorcycle license, you could use anything motorized that had two wheels. You could use a moped. I'm pretty sure that's what he used to pass his license to get that class of license. And he immediately went out and bought a Katana 750. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with motorcycles, a Katana 750 is what people often refer to as a crotch rocket. It's a very fast motorcycle. Even for an experienced motorcycle driver, it's a heavy machine. It's a very powerful, strong, fast machine. My brother had no business owning a Katana 750. My brother had a girlfriend at the time. It was his first true love, and they had recently broken up. And my brother was downtown with the boys, and he was sad about this breakup. He was upset and wanted to make it right. So he made another choice, and he walked to my grandfather's house where this motorcycle was parked. You see, my brother convinced another member of my family to co-sign on this motorcycle, even after my father said no. My brother wasn't the kind of guy who took no for an answer. So he convinced someone else in my family to co-sign for this motorcycle. My brother walked the 30 minutes from downtown, roughly, to where the motorcycle was parked, and he hopped on that motorcycle and he headed out towards his ex-girlfriend's house. He was going there to try to make things right. Now, we're not sure what happened, but he lost control of the motorcycle, and there was two lanes that merged into one. And he was driving at a high rate of speed and lost control. And where the lane merged into one, he hit the curb. And it jumped onto the grass. And the tank split him in two, basically. Split him. And he severed his femoral artery. And my brother died at the scene. This was the first death in my family. First person in my family to die. in our immediate family. My grandparents were both alive on both sides. My parents were alive. My great-grandmother was still alive. We had never experienced anything like this. It was horrifying. It's still, well, it never goes away. I was going to say it still haunts me. It never goes away. It's there. But I've made some choices of my own. And I've decided that I'm going to learn some lessons from that. And I continue to think about my brother in a positive way and all of the great things that he was. And I feel so blessed to have had him for the 21 years that I had him for a brother. You never get over the loss of a brother. You never get over watching your parents bury their oldest son. You never get over hearing your grandfathers crying, weeping like children. It's just something that stays with you. Now, fast forward a little while, and we got some good news. We got some news that Monique, my wife at the time, was pregnant. And although, like I say, there's nothing that can replace your son, your brother, this was some good news at a time where we needed it most. The family was in mourning. We just couldn't get past it. There was a dark cloud that sort of was surrounding us. And the news that Monique was pregnant, just it was a happy time. It was a happy thing. There was some sunshine in a very cloudy time. We were happy. We were excited. It was our first child, and it was the first grandchild for my mom and dad. So we were pretty pumped. We were pretty excited about this. And everything was great. Everything was going smoothly until about 8 months in, when we went in to see the doctors, and they told us that there was something wrong, that the baby wasn't fully developed for the stage that she was at, and that we would have to go to the IWK, the Grace Maternity Hospital, a specialty hospital 3 hours away in Halifax, to give birth. Now, at the time, I had a training partner that was second to none. We would go to the gym together, we would train hard, and he would really push me. He was this guy that everybody kind of looked up to. He was a successful man by every standard you could imagine. He was good looking, not that that matters, but he was a good looking dude. He was a black belt in martial arts. He had just won Mr. New Brunswick bodybuilding title. He had a great career. He had a young daughter. He just seemed to be everything that men wanted to be. And he was my training partner. He was a great man. And I remember being at the gym with him, and we were training legs. And I remember sort of complaining and whining about how my brother had recently passed. And now we had just found out that, the baby was having some troubles, and we would have to go to the IWK to give birth to our daughter. And I was just in a state where it was just, woe is me, 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 me. And I didn't realize it at the time. Hindsight's a great thing, but I didn't realize it at the time. But Donnie was his name, wasn't saying a whole lot. He was just really pushing hard in this training session. I remember it still. It was hardcore. And again, as I mentioned, hindsight's a great thing. But Donnie, on the way out of the gym, paid off his gym membership for the year. That was unheard of. No one ever paid off their gym memberships. You paid monthly. That was the way it was. But he paid off his gym membership. And he went home, and I went home. Now, this was before Facebook. This was before social media. This was before any of this stuff was even alive. It wasn't a thing. We still had 8-track cassettes. If you don't know what those are, look it up. We had 8 tracks. And we heard on the radio that there was a man who was out on his porch shooting a gun in the air. And the cops had been called to come to the scene and try to control the scene. Now, the exact details of the story aren't really clear, but we know some of the details. This man, the police calmed him down and they took him to the hospital. Then he was released from the hospital. Eventually, he made it home with his brother. And his brother left him for the night and told him he would meet him the next morning. And that night, my training partner and one of my best friends at the time committed suicide. He hung himself. And this was a week before Monique and I were traveling to the IWK to give birth to our first daughter. So on the way to the IWK, we had to stop at my training partner and best friend's wake. We couldn't be there for the funeral, which was the next day, because we had to be at the IWK. It was a sad, sad drive, I can tell you that. There wasn't a whole lot of words to be said. And anyone that knows me knows that when there's no talking, there's something seriously wrong. Donnie was a great man, but he had a lot of demons, and depression and suicide are something, it's things that we will never understand. And I mentioned this in my book that, we need to be more aware of it. We need to be a little more keen and aware of people who are struggling. And even though from an outside in perspective, Donnie was a tough guy and a strong man, people suffer. And we need to be more open to talking about depression. Because I still wonder to this day, this is one of these things, this is a sad part about suicide. I still wonder to this day, could I have said or done anything differently that day? Could I have invited Donnie to my house after the workout? Could I have gone to his house? Could we have gone out to eat? Could I have done something that would have changed the course? I don't know. I'll never know. We're at the IWK now, and we're at the final stages we're at the 9 months in, and we're about to give birth to our first child. And we're still positive. We're still excited. We know that there's something wrong. We know that there's issues, but we're positive, and we're trying to stay positive because we're thinking, we've been through enough. The nurse tells Monique that things are moving along nicely, and that she was wondering if she would like to have a bath downstairs. And Monique says, yeah, let's do that. That sounds, sounds great. She hasn't been able to have a bath in a little while because she's so pregnant. And they get her in the elevator, and they're about to take her downstairs to this cool bathtub thing that they're going to spray her down and do all this great stuff to her. And we're about halfway down, and Monique says, there's something going on. I have to push. And the nurse says, well, no, you were only dilated to 6 when we just checked you. And Monique says, no, there's something going on. And the nurse checked, and the head was there. So they bring her back up, and they immediately, do their thing, and Monique gives birth. And we hold our baby girl, Jessica, in our arms for 2 hours before she passes away. Now, I know that's an excruciating story, and I don't tell it to you to make you sad. I don't tell it to people for them to feel sorry for me. There are lessons in these stories. The first lesson is perseverance, because Monique ended up having 8 pregnancies. And we had another child that we lost, and we had 2 daughters as a result of 8 pregnancies. And Monique just refused to give up. And that's the lesson there, is never, ever give up. The doctor said there was a 50-50 chance that this could happen again. Monique said, I don't care. We're having children. And I'm glad she never gave up, because if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be blessed with 2 beautiful daughters today. I learned the lesson from Donnie. And the lesson is to be more aware and to listen and to talk more with your friends and loved ones and find out where they are at and be more open to the discussion about mental illness and depression. With Anthony, the lesson is life is short. With all of these, life is short. With all of these deaths that I went through. And this is in the first year and a half of my marriage to Monique, and she should have ran for the hills. But the lesson is life is short. And life is precious, but there are lessons. With Jessica, how many people can say that they were able to hold their daughter in their arms for her entire life? Life is a gift. Life is precious. You have to get up every single day and remember that. You have to get up every single day and do the best you can to be the best you can. Because for all the people that have passed before me, I owe it to them to work my butt off every single day to be the best person I can be and to help as many people on earth to realize their true potential. We all have unimaginable potential. Life happens, and we have choices that we make. I could have chosen the path of drugs. I could have chosen the path of alcohol. I could have chosen to let life take over and to beat me down. But I've chosen to be the best I could possibly be every single day. And I've chosen to help others discover that in themselves. Don't let life beat you down. Refuse to tap out. Refuse to give up. I didn't give up. And now my mission in life is to help others be the best they can be. The lessons I learned from these three incredible people, one that I had with me for 21 years, another was my best friend and training partner, another was this beautiful angel, a daughter that only lived for 2 hours. But those 2 hours were her entire life, and they were a gift to me and Monique. Don't give up on life. No matter what life throws at you, don't tap out. It's worth fighting for because the best is still to come. Keep fighting every single day. Take care, guys.